Christmas, the traditional Yuletide holiday. But this year, make it less traditional with a special Christmas guide. Christmas Tolerance Diversity Guide. We all know that Christmas is a family holiday. So make sure all your parents are properly numbered. This year, follow the agenda and make a snow woman instead of snowman. Or even better, let the snow person decide for themselves. Now, gifts. No dolls or teddy bears. Prepare your children for the brave new world. Remember, diversity is not a toy. This is no longer an appropriate costume. This is appropriation. Zoological appropriation. Offensive to the deer community. And obviously, Santa has to be cancelled. Why? Because he is a white cisgender male who abuses Mrs. Claus, discriminates against children based on behavior, wears red, which is the communist color, makes children sit on his lap, makes people destroy trees, and exploits elves. So, sorry kids, Santa is not coming to town anymore. Follow these instructions, or stick to the spirit of Christmas. You decide.
Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Bashem Yahshai, Bashem Kokodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today we're known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites spoken of in the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the video you just seen and how not only does it call out the foolery and confusion going on here in America, which is biblically known as Babylon the Great, but it also shows you that Satan's house is fighting against itself. And what I mean by that is that this commercial was made by a Russian news station known as Russia Today, right? And these Russians, they're Edomites as well, right? And when I say Edomites, I'm talking about a modern day Caucasian, right? Because when you go back to the true biblical names of the Caucasian race, they are known as the nation of Edom or Edomites, okay? Now, Russians and Americans, Caucasians, they're all the same. They come from the same stock. Okay, they are Edomites. They're just on different continents and have different cultures because of the way that they were raised up through history and all that stuff, right? But that, I'm digressing. Let's focus on this commercial, right? But before we get into that, let's read the scripture real quick. This is Isaiah 19 and 14. We're actually going to read a bit of this. This is Yahweh Bashem Yahshai hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Right? Now, this here is foretelling a prophecy how the Lord was going to bring down Babylon the Great in a way where, for example, that it would be as a drunken man, right? Like it tells you here, you know, wallowing in his own vomit, right? And when it tells you here, Egypt, that I've highlighted, that's actually just a reference to modern day America, right? Because America, when you look at it spiritually, as it tells you in the Bible, it is known as Sodom and Egypt. Also, the Caucasians, when you go back in history, they actually had taken over Egypt around the time after Alexander the Great had conquered it. Let's take a look at the Bible timeline, right? When we get down here to the time when Alexander the Great came onto the scene, right? Well, Alexander, when he was came into power around 336 to 323, being when he reigned, that is, right? When he was known for all the great things he did, right? Great to the Caucasians, that is. Well, after he died, his 4 generals basically split up his empire. Okay, now you had Antigonus take Macedonia area, right? Basically, what's known as Eastern Europe. Lysimachus took Asia, right? And then Seleucus took Syria, and Ptolemy took Egypt, right? And after this time, right? The Egyptians, well, at least for a while, the Egyptians were reigned by Caucasians, right? Pharaoh, Cleopatra, they were all Edomites, right? And on top of that, they were Amalekites, right? The top tribe of Edom, which are known today as the so-called Jews, right? Well, that's what this is referring to. Now, let's continue to read on and see what else is going to happen in this prophecy, right? It tells you here, it says, "Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or the tail, branch or rush may do." Right? So the Lord's going to cause an economic disaster in the land of Babylon the Great, which we're currently living through it right now. Right? The Lord is putting it on the spirit of people to just not want to work anymore. Right? There's been an event called the Great Resignation, right? Or the Great Quit, where, besides this whole pandemic that's going on, that's causing businesses to close down, what it's done is it's put into, that pandemic, and also just the spirit that the Lord is putting on people. People are starting to realize that it's just not worth their misery and their time to work for such a hard and unthankful job for something that they aren't going to get paid that much for, right? Inflation is also causing people to realize that even more, right? So this is the spirit that is causing the jobs to just go away, and it's only going to get worse. Right now we're living through, the beginning part of it, and 2022 is going to be even worse. You're going to see more people quitting their jobs, losing their jobs, more businesses closing, just because people are going to start going on with their lives with a lot less, right? You're going to start, I'm pretty sure we'll probably see some reports talking about how Christmas sales just weren't as good as were expected, and that, they're going to blame it on the whole supply chain drama and, people losing their jobs. But the point being is that people are just not buying so much stuff anymore, man, because they don't want to buy shit they don't need to impress people they don't like. And what that's going to cause is this whole consumerism system that Babylon the Great is built upon, America, that it's going to cause like a domino effect where businesses are going to close, jobs are going to go away, and but again, this is ultimately, not only is it the Lord's plan, as we're just reading right here in this highlighted text, but it's also these devils who run this world's plan, right? Because they're systematically bringing down America, right? And that's because the Lord, He basically has put it into their hearts to bring forth their new world order, which calls for this agenda to go through. Let's continue. Verse 16. "In that day shall Egypt be like unto women." Right? We already know what that means, man. Not only are the men here in America, feminized, right? We've been chemically attacked, right? You got lower sperm rates, lower than ever. You got men, thinking that they can change their sexes to women, all these different things, man. It's crazy, right? And also too, just the man of today is nothing like the man of days long ago, man. Right? You hear about your grandpa building a house with his bare hands, doing all this when he was 12, 14, right? Nowadays, man, you're considered mature if you move out of your house about 20 when you're 24, right? It's crazy, man. And it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of Yahweh Bashem Ashai of hosts, right? Because right now, all the shaking of the hand of the Lord, what that is a representation of is not only is it all these natural disasters and all the crazy judgment that we're seeing going on around the world, but it's also basically the prophets out there, man. When we're out there preaching the truth of the Bible, telling people that the Lord isn't coming back in a nice manner, that he's going to come down and bring destruction, and a lot of people are going to die, and we're telling them basically just the truth of the Bible. That's the shaking of the hand of the Lord, man. We're basically telling people that they need to basically repent or they're going to perish in their sins, right? It says, and the land of Judah, right, the so-called Negroes, shall be a terror unto Egypt. Everyone that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself, because of the counsel of Yahweh Bashem Ashai of hosts, which he hath determined against it. Right? And right now we're seeing all these mass, shoplifting sprees, mass high crimes in San Francisco. A brother just made a video lesson about how people are having to leave their cars unlocked and windows rolled down just so they don't get broken when these jakes are breaking in, man. A lot of them I bet you are homeless, or they could just be freaking devils, man. Wicked 2/3 of our people, man, who aren't, can't get their PPP loans or, can't, get a job. So what they're doing, they're basically preying on society, man. Right? This is what it means that Judah is going to be a terror onto Egypt, right? And this is all the work of the Lord as you're seeing it prophesied here, right? Well, let's get into this article and just read what these Russians, are trying to do, and look at all the shade that they're throwing here to the Americans, man. Now it says, Russia mocks woke American snowflakes with Christmas diversity guide. As American institutions continue to slide deeper and deeper into wokeism, and attempts to resist the resistance are met with cancel campaigns and authoritarianism, all that's left at this point is parody. Right? See, because that's ultimately what life here in Babylon has become, man. It's a joke, right? It's confusion, right? The word Babylon goes back to the word Babal, which means confusion, and that's what America ultimately is, man. It's a ball of confusion, and what's happening now, man, is that these other Edomites from another country, the supposed arch enemies of America, right, are mocking their fellow brother, right? These other Edomites are attacking these other Edomites, right? Now this is all an attempt at pointing out the propaganda that is getting pushed over here. Because right now, like I said again, the bringing down of America cannot happen until you morally destroy it, right? And what we're seeing right now is the moral destruction of the American population, right? Once that is done, you're going to see they're going to destroy the economy. They're going to destroy every bit of America that you grew up in, right? If you were born before 1990, right? Even if you're basically born before 2000, the America that you grew up in will no longer exist, right? It is dying. They're killing it, right? And this is ultimately the plan of these New World Order, devils, these Edomites at the top, the kings of Edom, to bring forth their new agenda, which is ultimately to take over the world, fight the Lord, and kill off the Israelites, you Negro, Latino, and Native Americans. But in doing so, there's certain things they got to do, like psychologically destroy the American empire. Right? Now let's continue to read. It says, to that end, the Russian state-sponsored RT has put together a 2-minute clip mocking everything that the American left has become with a Christmas tolerance diversity guide for 2022. which trolls the US with everything that feminized, cuckold husbands to transgendered snowmen to culturally appropriating a reindeer. Perhaps the US state-sponsored Radio Free Liberty can throw something together mocking Russians for functional alcoholism and how their hotties turn into babushkas seemingly overnight. But unfortunately, the left can't mind, and of course, it might offend someone. So you see there, it's again, this is all part of these devils, man, fighting against each other, man. See, this is how the Egyptians are fighting against the Egyptians, right? The Lord is bringing fighting with amongst this own nation of Edom, right? This is how ultimately their empire falls. This is Jeremiah 51:2. And will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land, and in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. And this parody commercial, along with the sentiments that news channels like RT bring to the American public, it is creating an anti-American, or basically an anti-woke personality here in America, right? And those people, right, are becoming these fans or fanners that the scripture is talking about, man. Right? There's many different fanners that are created, which are simply gonna, stoke the fire which is already burning here in Babylon. And when I say fire, I'm talking about the spiritual fire, because you see, America will eventually burn up in literal nuclear fire. But before that happens, the Lord is setting a spiritual fire within the people and amongst the culture and amongst the land of America, right? And this is to ultimately destroy it spiritually. When we're out there prophesying, doing these lessons here, for example, or just telling other people that we meet, right, about the truth of the Bible, what's really going on. When we simply make mentions or comment on social issues or economic things, any type of information that we put out, that is against this agenda, that right there is a banner, right? It's only intensifying those flames of destruction, man. Right? And why is this happening? Well, like I said again, America must fall according to biblical prophecy, right? And this is what we are currently living through, man. This is why 2022 is only going to get worse. You're only going to hear that sentiment coming from the prophets, man. We're only going to tell you the truth because this is what the Bible is telling you, man. And man, this isn't coming from us, man. This is coming from what the Lord wrote down through his prophets to prophesy the downfall of the last kingdom upon earth before the second coming of his only begotten Son, right? Who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, whose true Hebrew name is Yahweh Shai, right? which is Hebrew for He is salvation. But let's read this. This is Ezekiel 38:10. Thus saith Yahweh Bashim Shai power. It shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. All right? And this is ultimately talking about the Russians, man. Right? The Russians that are currently going back and forth with America and NATO. Right? You're constantly hearing Putin bring out points talking about how he doesn't want to fight with America or NATO, but he will if he has to, and that he has to protect his homeland, and that he's not the invading force, but he's simply trying to stop the invading force that's coming through. See, all these things are happening because the Lord is rising up the spirits of the enemies of Babylon the Great, right? And that also includes other Edomites in other countries, right? But at one point, something's going to happen where the Lord is finally going to something going to happen, and he's basically going to put the thought into the enemies of America, and even some of America's allies. He's going to put an evil thought into their mind, Right? And what is this? This is talking about treachery. It's talking about coming against America, destroying it. Right? That's what's ultimately going to happen. Right? And for those who have not turned to the Lord, who have not come to this truth, right? Who have heard what we've been preaching and decided to, not take it serious, decided that we're just making things up or not worth your time because you're too busy trying to work, trying to build your empire, trying to do something here in America. Well, this is what is coming for you, right? Because there's no place in the kingdom for the 2/3 or the heathen, right? People who the promise of the Bible of salvation was never made to, and also the 2/3 of our people, that's 2 out of every 3 Negro, Latino, Native Americans, who decided to loathe this truth and not jump upon the opportunity to get salvation for themselves. Right? They either, like I said, we're too busy, we're set in their ways and worshiping other false idols, which they were told was God, or just didn't have or too apathetic to even look into this, right? They love God, but they won't read the Bible. They love God, but they don't have time to talk about it. Right? This is what's waiting for you, man. A thermonuclear missile, right, with your name written on it, man. And just as you see here, America, along with these other NATO empires or nations over here on your right-hand side, this is what's gonna come to you, man. You're gonna burn up in that fire. So, hopefully this video was edifying, Aki. Until the next time, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakakwadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.